Welcome, beautiful, to another episode of the Sacred Roots podcast. I'm so glad to be connecting with you again. Thank you so much for being here and spending the next 20 minutes with me, where we are going to go on a journey back through spiral time. If you've listened to my previous episode about the cyclical and spiral nature of time, we are going to go back through the spiral and see the presence of temples through the ages, what temples were, and how temples were actually deeply honoring the goddess, the feminine. What happened to these temples? Why were they destroyed? What were they doing inside these temples? And I believe that this episode is going to awaken a sense of remembrance for you, maybe remembering that you were in these temples, that you walked on the cold, refreshing stones of these temples to sit in circle and learn and be initiated and remember who you really were. Because temples originally were places to remember your divine nature. They weren't churches or synagogues where you would learn the sacred texts or be preached to. They were schools of embodiment. And they were really universities for the souls, where neophytes, this is how you call the people who are about to become initiates, you call them neophytes. They remember how to live in alignment with their divine essence. And so it is said that the first mystery schools were built in temples by Thoth. So Thoth is the Egyptian god of wisdom. And in Egyptian spirituality, Thoth is the father of Isis, the great Isis, the great mother, the mother of love, wisdom, healing, sacred sexuality, the wife of Osiris, the queen of Egypt. And he really created the first mystery schools, but it is her, goddess Isis, who was known as the main goddess, who was really worshipped in ancient Egypt and then all the way through the Mediterranean. So it is believed that the first temples of Isis were built maybe the 3rd or 4th century BC. That's what history books would tell you. I believe it was actually even before that. And I have records of myself being a priestess in the temples of Isis in the 3rd millennia before Christ. But it's really in 380 that the temple of Isis was built in Philae, in Aswan, as we know it now, the famous temple of Isis where a lot of spiritual seekers go today. And it really became a spiritual heart for the Isis mysteries, a site where a lot of healing and initiation would happen. And in the 3rd century before Christ, so 300 to 200 BC, there was a huge spread of the worship of Isis all over the world. She was taken over by the Greeks and known as Demeter. This is why Isis was worshipped a lot as the goddess of the cereals, the agriculture. She's believed to have brought agriculture over to the people after the flood. Just like Demeter in the Greek tradition is the goddess of agriculture, of the cereals, of, like the earth. And so she just changed name. She's essentially the same. And it's believed that her worship dwelled all the way to Greece, Rome, France, all the way to Paris. Paris actually comes from par Isis, par Isidos, which means the city of Isis. And it is believed that on the Île de la Cité, where today we have Notre Dame de Paris, there used to be a temple devoted to Isis. Just like the very famous church of Saint-Germain-des-Prés in Paris. In the 16th, there's a historian who found a statue of Isis underneath the church. So it is believed that there were several temples of Isis in the city of Paris, and that her teachings were deeply connected to the river of the Seine, just like in Egypt, where her teachings are deeply connected to the sacred waters of the Nile, because goddess Isis is teaching us about the healing and birthing powers of the water, the cyclical nature of water, the cleansing abilities of water, and the feminine mysteries who are deeply connected to water. And it's in the 1st century BC, there was another temple built in her name in Alexandria. where there was the famous library of Alexandria that used to contain a lot of knowledge, but that was burned a few centuries later. And Mary Magdalene went to study in that temple of Alexandria, that temple of Isis in Alexandria. And a lot of the Essenes and the more wealthy and educated people at the time would send their brightest daughters to the temple of Isis to be initiated into the Isis mysteries that were teaching about sovereignty, spiritual awakening, womb mysteries, healing, and also sacred sexuality. But in the 4th century after Christ, in about 391 CE, the temple of Isis in Alexandria was destroyed and burned under the Roman Emperor Theodosius I, who banned all pagan practices. And you're going to see as I speak about a few other temples that a lot of temples got destroyed at the time. And that was really the end of any presence of the goddess anywhere in the spirituality. And Christianity really became the only religion that was allowed. So that's the 4th century after Christ, right after the Council of Nicaea, about 70 to 75 years later. So let's have a look at another temple that was actually devoted to Gaia, to the goddess, to the divine feminine. And then something happened. And that's the temple of Apollo. So Apollo obviously is a masculine god in Delphi in Greece. And it was considered to be the navel of the world in Greek philosophy and spirituality. But originally, that temple in 2000 BCE was devoted to Gaia, to Earth Mother. And there was a sacred spring in that temple where there were gas that was coming out, and the priestesses would then have oracular experiences, receive prophecies, and be able to channel divine wisdom. And it is believed that there was a python, a serpent, a dragon, that was protecting the site. Was it true or not? We don't know, but of course we do know that a python, snake, dragon is a deeply feminine symbol and represents primordial feminine wisdom and oracular power. And so these early priestesses were protected by that python. But in about 1600 BCE, the myth of Apollo slaying the dragon happened. So he went to the door of the temple and slayed the python. And that symbolizes the takeover of patriarchy, because patriarchy started in about 3000 BCE, but started to spread more and more in 1500 BCE. And that temple became the temple of Apollo. It was not a sacred site devoted to the Earth Mother anymore. But the oracles of Delphi, the priestesses, were still allowed to do their oracular work. And about 800 years later, more and more kings, politicians, people of power all over the Mediterranean would know about the Pythia, the high priestess, the oracle of that temple, and go there to receive guidance from her. It's also at that time that they wrote on that temple the famous maxim, "Know thyself," which really established the Temple of Apollo as a mystery school, not just a place where people would receive oracular guidance, but a place where people would come to know themselves, to find themselves, to receive spiritual initiation. It really became a center of spiritual education, spiritual growth, spiritual alignment, known as a mystery school that was guiding people towards inner truth and spiritual mastery. But what happened is that this temple also got destroyed in the 4th century after Christ under that same emperor, Theodosius I, who banned all the pagan practices because Christianity became the religion. So it's interesting to see that there was a lot of goddess worship on the earth all up to that point, but that throughout the centuries, more and more of these temples who were devoted to the goddess became devoted to a male deity. And we see the same in the temple of Dodona, who was Also in Greece, also originally dedicated to Gaia, to the Earth Mother, the priestesses there would interpret the rustling of the oak leaves and the flight of doves to deliver messages. Doves, which are a deeply divine feminine symbol, also connected to the Pleiadians. And it's interesting because those priestesses in particular were called the Pleiades. Could there be a connection with the Pleiadian star system? Knowing that that star system is deeply feminine and is all about feminine wisdom. That's a story for another day. But that temple and oracle later became associated with Zeus, who's like the main god in Greek mythology. And Dione, the feminine goddess connected to Zeus, was still present, but secondary. So it's so interesting to see how through the ages, these temples who were essentially devoted to the earth, to the feminine, to the wisdom of creation, slowly became overtaken by patriarchy, by masculine gods, and eventually completely forbidden in the 4th century. But this wisdom is coming back today through each of us, because we were those priestesses. We were those wise women. We were those healers, those oracles. We were the midwives of the soul. And we remember having learned about sacred geometry, sacred sounds, sacred sexuality, the path of the goddess. So we are rebuilding temples now in our modern lives, but also in the way that we are living, because we are remembering that our body is a temple. We don't need to gather under a building made of stones to make it happen. Our everyday life becomes the temple of our devotion. Our life becomes the sacred offering where we express our souls and our devotion to the divine and to our purpose. So I want to guide you through a small meditation so that you can return to the inner temple of Gaia and return to the temple of your essence and your purpose. And if this work is activating something inside of you, I invite you to have a look at the Sacred Roots Mystery School. I'm going to put the link in the show notes of this episode, because this is the work that we do inside my mystery school. We reclaim the path of the goddess. We remember who we came here to be. We remember the wisdom that we collected throughout these lifetimes, and we birth it for greater spiritual alignment, spiritual leadership, and spiritual mastery in this lifetime. Because the purpose of the Sacred Roots Mystery School is really to help you step into this next timeline where you experience more depth, more meaning, more joy, more fulfillment, and really live your soul's purpose, all while being deeply connected to the divine. So if that's calling you, just check the link in the show notes of this episode. For now, take a deep inhale and exhale with a soft sigh. Again, inhale and let your body soften, your shoulders soften, your belly soften. Now imagine you're standing at the entrance of an ancient temple. It's carved into the earth, surrounded by sacred trees, and in the air you smell the scent of soil and moss and roses all around you. You feel the pulse of the earth in your feet, steady and ancient, calling you home. And you step forward, entering this temple of Gaia, the mother of all. Inside this temple, it is warm. There's a soft glow of firelight, the gentle sound of water flowing. You feel safe, held, seen. You feel home. You realize this temple is within you, a sacred space in your heart and in your womb, where Gaia's wisdom lives and is waiting for you to come back to. So place your hand on your heart and on your womb and breathe deeply. And you can whisper softly to yourself, I remember. I am a daughter of the earth. I am a daughter of Isis. I am held. I am guided by her. I am powerful. And I reclaim all these parts of me that I have left behind now. Allow any images, sensations, or messages from Gaia to arise now. You are the oracle. Allow your ears to hear and your eyes to see. And stay here for a few breaths, simply receiving. If it's not a message, just receiving this frequency of Mother Divine and Mother Earth. And when you're ready, thank Gaia for her guidance. Feel the earth beneath you, grounding you back into your body and into this moment. Take a deep breath in and exhale with a soft smile. You are home. You are whole. And you carry the temple of Gaia wherever you go within you. Maybe as this podcast finishes, you want to take a moment to integrate this frequency, this moment of remembrance, and journal what Gaia whispered to your soul. Send me a DM on Instagram. If you feel called to share, we'd love to hear from you so we can remember all together. Many blessings to you. And if you want to walk this path more deeply with a sacred container, have a look at the Sacred Roots Mystery School and put your name on the priority list so you're sure you can save a seat for you, if it's calling your soul, of course. So much love. I'll see you in our next episode.